Hello everyone, welcome to today's video, where we explore the life of a music legend who wrote timeless tunes and moved the world, Paul Anka. From the streets of Ottawa to the bright lights of Las Vegas, Paul Anka's story is an inspiring, yet tumultuous and mysterious journey. Let's find out what made Paul Anka who he is, and what lies behind his aura. Don't forget to hit the bell and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more great stories about the stars who shaped the music world. At the height of his career, Paul Anka was an irresistible phenomenon, a young man with a sweet voice and timeless songwriting talent, who had the world dancing to tunes like Diana and Put Your Head on My Shoulder. In the 1952nd and 1962nd, he was a symbol of youth, a pop star whose charming smile and songs touched the hearts of millions. His name echoed from American radio stations to the great halls of Europe, where he performed to ecstatic crowds. More than just a singer, Paul Anka was also a genius songwriter, the man behind immortal songs such as Frank Sinatra's My Way and Tom Jones's She's a Lady. His success was like a blazing volcano, erupting with light and energy, attracting everyone's attention. But behind the glittering halo, was there a darkness that we never knew? Great success often comes with a high price, invisible pressures, broken relationships, and lonely moments in the crowd. What really happened to Paul Anka, who was once on top of the world? What makes such a bright star face such unexpected challenges? Let's explore to find out. Paul Anka is not just a singer and songwriter, but also a symbol of perseverance and timeless talent. At the age of 16, he wrote and performed Diana, a song that became a global phenomenon, catapulting him from a boy in Ottawa to the position of an international star. His songwriting ability, combined with his warm voice and captivating performance style, made him one of the youngest artists to ever dominate the music charts. But is the aura really sustainable? What are the stories behind his timeless songs, complicated relationships, and life-changing decisions? Let's dive into Paul Anka's journey, from the difficult days to the pinnacle of fame, to discover the real man behind the legend. Paul Albert Anka was born on the 30th of July, 1941, in Ottawa, Canada, to Lebanese immigrants. His father, Andrew Anka, owned a small restaurant called Locanda, where the family made a living by serving diners on a small budget. His mother, Margaret Camelia Anka, was a devoted homemaker who tried to provide warmth for the family amid financial hardship. Life was not easy for the Anka family. His father's restaurant often fell into disrepair, especially during Ottawa's harsh winters, when customers were few and far between. The small house where the family lived was cramped and uncomfortable, with cold winter nights when the family huddled around an old fireplace to keep warm. Meals often consisted of bread, potato soup, or simple dishes that his mother prepared from cheap ingredients. The greatest pain of Paul's childhood was the loss of his mother, Margaret, when he was just 18 years old. She died in 1960 from diabetes, a shock that plunged Paul into a deep state of grief. Margaret had always encouraged Paul to pursue his passion for music, often singing him Lebanese folk songs as a child. Her passing left an unfillable void in Paul's heart, and he has said that his first songs were all about missing his mother. Before his mother's death, his family also faced financial stress, with the Locanda restaurant facing the threat of closure due to debt. Paul, from a young age, worked at his father's restaurant, washing dishes, waiting tables, and even performing his own songs to attract customers. To escape his difficult circumstances, Paul turned to music as an escape. He began singing in the choir of Street Elijah Syrian Orthodox Church, where his voice was noticed at an early age. Paul was not an outstanding student in school, but he stood out in his performances. He regularly participated in talent shows in Ottawa, where he sang songs by Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra, his idols, to earn extra money. Paul worked odd jobs such as delivering newspapers, washing cars, and even selling ice cream at local fairs. These jobs not only helped him support his family, but also taught him the value of hard work and perseverance. Paul's tumultuous childhood, filled with loss and hardship, forged in him a strong will, which became the foundation for the resilience he displayed throughout his career. Paul Anka's career journey began with a chance but fateful opportunity when he was just 15 years old. In 1956, while performing at a local fair in Ottawa, Paul caught the attention of a music producer from New York, Don Costa. Costa, who was scouting young talent at the time, was impressed by Paul's sweet voice and confident performance. He invited Paul to New York for an audition, an offer that Paul initially thought was unrealistic because his family could not afford the trip. However, with encouragement from his father, Paul borrowed money from an uncle and set off for New York with a big dream and a few songs he had written. In New York, Paul faced his first difficulties. He had to live in a small, cramped apartment and faced fierce competition from other young artists. During his audition with Don Costa at ABC Paramount Records, Paul performed Diana, a song he had written inspired by an older girl he had a crush on in Ottawa. The song, with its catchy melody and emotional lyrics, was an instant hit. Costa recognized Paul's potential and signed him, marking a major turning point in his career. Diana was released in 1957 and quickly became a global phenomenon, selling millions of copies and making Paul, at the age of 16, one of the youngest stars ever to dominate the music charts. However, Paul's early journey was not easy. He faced the pressure of rising to fame so quickly, with producers and the public expecting him to constantly produce new hits. Paul also struggled to be recognized as a songwriter, not just a teenage singer. His perseverance and songwriting talent helped him overcome these challenges. He spent hours in the studio, writing songs and experimenting with different styles, from light pop to soulful ballads. The support of Don Costa, who was not only a producer but also a mentor, helped Paul build his confidence and shape his style. It was his passion and relentless creativity that helped Paul survive in the harsh music industry, laying the foundation for his later great success. Paul Anka's peak period lasted from the late 1952 to the 1972, when he became one of the most influential artists in music history. After the success of Diana, Paul continued to release a series of hits such as Put Your Head on My Shoulder, Lonely Boy and Puppy Love, songs that not only dominated the charts, but also became icons of 1952 pop music. His warm, soulful voice, combined with his ability to write memorable melodies and heartfelt lyrics, made him an idol to millions of audiences around the world. Paul's performances in the US, Canada, and Europe were sold out, with crowds of young girls cheering wildly whenever he took the stage. What set Paul Anka apart was not only his voice, but also his outstanding songwriting talent. He wrote songs not only for himself, but also for other music legends. The song My Way, written for Frank Sinatra in 1969, became one of the most famous songs of all time, expressing the indomitable and free spirit of the human spirit. He also wrote She's a Lady for Tom Jones, a song with a strong and seductive style. Paul's songwriting ability was not limited to one genre, from pop, jazz, to soulful ballads, making him respected not only as a singer, but also as a genius songwriter. His performance style, combining confidence and sincerity, created an unmistakable mark. Paul Anka's influence was also felt through his pioneering work for other young artists. As one of the first teen stars, he proved that youth was no barrier to achieving great success. He also actively supported new artists, sharing his experiences and even producing their music. Paul's career was not only a story of personal success but also of shaping a musical era, where his songs became part of the collective memory of millions. At his peak, Paul Anka was not just a star, but a cultural phenomenon who left an indelible mark on the history of world music. Despite his great success, Paul Anka was not without major conflicts and upheavals in his career. One of the most serious conflicts occurred in the 1972 when he disagreed with producers and record labels about his musical direction. While Paul wanted to experiment with new genres such as rock and soul to refresh his image, his producers wanted him to continue with the teen pop style that had made him famous. This tension led to heated arguments, and Paul felt stifled in his ability to express himself. He once shared that there were times when he felt like a puppet in the hands of the producers, being forced to do things against his will. Another major event came in 1974 when Paul decided to leave RCA Records after many years of cooperation. The decision was made after a series of disagreements over creative rights and profits. Paul felt that he was not being paid enough for his contributions, especially when his own songs, such as My Way, were bringing in millions of dollars for the label. Leaving RCA, while a bold move, cost him the support of one of the biggest record labels of the time. This led to a difficult period, when Paul had to find his own opportunities and rebuild his career without a strong backing. The sense of injustice became even more evident when Paul realized that his name was gradually being overshadowed by younger artists in the new wave of pop and rock music of the 1972. He once shared that he felt abandoned by the music industry, where constant innovation left artists like him struggling to stay relevant. The suspicious silence from some of his colleagues and the media only added to Paul's sense of isolation. He began to wonder if he was still loved by his audience, and these years became some of the most challenging periods of his life. These conflicts, although painful, pushed Paul to seek to redefine himself, leading to important changes in his career and life later on. After the tumultuous 1972, Paul Anka chose to retreat from the big stage to focus on other aspects of his life and career. He turned to performing in casinos and theaters in Las Vegas, where he found a new space to connect with his audience. The Las Vegas shows, while not as glamorous as the big stages of his past, gave Paul financial stability and the opportunity to continue doing what he loved, singing and telling stories through music. He also began to invest in business, owning several properties and even opening a restaurant in Los Angeles, inspired by his father's Locanda restaurant. Paul also spent more time with his family, especially his 5 children from his marriage to Andezogep, Amanda, Alexandra, Antea, Amelia, and Alicia. He became a devoted father, involved in their lives and trying to make up for the busy years when he was often away. Paul began to change his outlook on life, realizing that success was not only about fame or money, but also about simple moments with family and friends. He also participated in charity work, especially programs to support disadvantaged children and diabetes research, an area that he was particularly interested in after the death of his mother. Although no longer at the peak of his career, Paul maintained his musical career with new albums and regular performances. He also tried his hand at writing music for films and television shows, further affirming his talent for composing. Paul did not make a brilliant comeback like some of his colleagues, but he chose to live a meaningful life, focusing on making quiet contributions. He once shared that he did not regret retiring from the spotlight because it gave him the opportunity to explore new aspects of himself and live a more fulfilling life. In his later years, at the age of 84, Paul Anka faced increasingly serious health problems, partly an inevitable part of aging and partly due to chronic diseases that had developed silently over time. In 2020, Paul was diagnosed with chronic bronchitis, a condition that reduces lung function and makes him susceptible to fatigue and shortness of breath, especially after long performances. This disease, combined with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, forced him to suspend live performance activities for a long time. Paul has said that not being able to stand on stage, where he feels most alive, has been one of the biggest challenges of his life. He also had to undergo hip replacement surgery in 2022 due to severe arthritis, a procedure that helped him relieve pain, but also limited his ability to move flexibly as before. The days lying in bed, facing pain and uncertainty, forced Paul to look back on his life with a deeper perspective. Paul's declining health was not only a physical challenge, but also deeply affected his inner self. He described lonely moments in the hospital, when he wondered if his glory years would be remembered by the public. As someone who had stood at the peak of fame, Paul found the public's oblivion to be an unbearable pain. However, he found solace in writing music and recording his thoughts in a personal diary. The songs he composed during this period, though not widely released, were deeply personal, reflecting on life, love, and the finiteness of time. Paul also turned to meditation and sessions with a counselor to cope with his anxieties about aging and death. He learned to accept that his legacy lay not only in his songs, but also in the values he conveyed through his music. The public response to Paul Anka during these years was a mixture of emotion, regret, and sometimes indifference. Loyal fans, especially those who grew up with Diana and My Way, often expressed their admiration and gratitude through letters and messages on social media. Paul's online performances during the pandemic were well received, with audiences sharing that his voice still retained its special appeal. For younger generations, however, Paul Anka's name is sometimes just a name in the history books, which makes him feel sad. But he is still honored with special programs, such as a tribute concert in Ottawa in 2023, where young artists will perform his famous songs. Paul Anka's legacy is a timeless musical treasure. Songs like Diana, Put Your Head on My Shoulder, and My Way are not only hits, but also cultural milestones, shaping the way the world feels about love and freedom. He left behind a musical legacy of more than 500 songs, many of which have been performed by other famous artists, from Elvis Presley to Michael Bublé. In addition, Paul left behind a spiritual legacy, the story of an immigrant boy who overcame hardship to become a legend. He also contributed to charities, especially those that support diabetes research and disadvantaged children, as a way to honor his mother and the community that raised him. Paul Anka's legacy is not just his melodies, but also the resilience, creativity, and kindness that he has passed on to the next generation. Paul Anka's health has been a major challenge in recent years, especially after he was diagnosed with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease in 2020. The disease often leaves him short of breath, especially when trying to sing or perform physically demanding activities. Performances, once Paul's greatest source of energy, have become a challenge. He uses a ventilator on days when his symptoms are worse, and doctors recommend limiting outdoor activities to avoid exposure to lung irritants. Additionally, arthritis has led to hip replacement surgery in 2022, a painful and lengthy recovery process. Paul once described the need to rely on a cane or wheelchair in the early days after surgery as a harsh reminder of how fragile my body island. Paul's treatment required a strict regimen of anti-inflammatory drugs, regular oxygen therapy, and physical therapy sessions to maintain mobility. However, these medications did not always work as expected. There were days when he felt exhausted due to side effects such as nausea and insomnia, making it difficult for him to focus on his writing. Paul also had to make lifestyle changes, from eating healthier, avoiding inflammatory foods, to minimizing long-term travel to protect his health. These changes, while necessary, left him feeling like he had lost some of the freedom he once cherished. In addition to his physical problems, Paul's mental health was also significantly affected. The illness and age caused him to occasionally fall into a mild state of depression, especially when he thought about not being able to perform with the same energy as before. He once shared that there were nights when he lay awake, wondering if the audience would remember him. To cope, Paul sought therapy, where he learned to accept his body's new limits and find joy in the little things, like an afternoon chatting with his children or listening to his old records. He also joined lung support groups in Ottawa, where he found empathy from others in his situation. Despite his health problems, Paul tried to maintain his career through small projects, like recording acoustic versions of old songs or appearing on online television shows. He also became more open about his health, using his personal story to raise awareness about chronic diseases and encourage people to get regular checkups. Paul's resilience in the face of his illness has earned him more respect, not only as an artist, but as a person who has overcome adversity to continue creating and contributing. Paul Anka's love life has been a roller coaster, with 3 marriages, each with its own joys and dark sides. His first marriage to Egyptian model Anna de Zogeb lasted from 1963 to 2000. It was the happiest period of Paul's life, as he and Anna raised a family of 5 children: Amanda, Alexandra, Antea, Amelia, and Alicia. However, the marriage was not without its dark sides. Paul's busy performing schedule, combined with the pressure of maintaining his fame, meant that he was often away from home. Anna, although a devoted wife, sometimes felt lonely and had to shoulder the responsibility of raising the children alone. Paul has admitted that he did not spend enough time with Anne, and arguments over the balance between career and family led to an estrangement. The marriage ended peacefully, but Paul always felt regretful for not being able to provide a complete family for his children. Paul's second marriage to Anna Anka, a Swedish personal trainer, from 2008 to 2010, was a tumultuous one. Anna, nearly 30 years Paul's junior, brought him a new lease of life, but the relationship quickly ran into problems. A major sticking point was the difference in lifestyle and expectations. Anna wanted Paul to be more involved in public events and the media, while Paul, in his mid-62nd, preferred a more private life. Arguments over finances and control also strained the relationship. Their divorce was widely reported in the press, with accusations from both sides that it damaged Paul's image. He has said the marriage was a mistake, but it also taught him to appreciate what really matters in life. Paul's third marriage to Lisa Pemberton from 2016 to 2020 was an attempt to find happiness in old age. Lisa, who worked in the fashion industry, brought Paul peace and stability. However, this marriage was not without its dark corners. Paul, with declining health, sometimes felt insecure about whether Lisa would be truly happy with someone much older. Generational differences and the pressure of caring for Paul during his illness led to a separation. The marriage ended in mutual respect, but Paul admits that he learned that love in old age requires understanding and sacrifice from both sides. Paul now lives alone but maintains a close relationship with his children, especially his son Ethan from his marriage to Anna, and he says that his family is his greatest source of happiness. Paul Anka's legacy is a musical and cultural treasure, with songs that have become icons for generations. Diana, released when he was just 16, was not only a hit but also a landmark in pop history, paving the way for later teenage artists. My Way, written for Frank Sinatra, became an anthem of freedom and determination, performed by hundreds of artists around the world. Other songs such as Put Your Head on My Shoulder, Lonely Boy, and She's a Lady continue to be beloved, appearing in films, commercials, and television shows, proving the timeless appeal of Paul Anka's music. He wrote more than 500 songs, many of which were performed by legends such as Elvis Presley, Barbra Streisand, and Michael Bublé, demonstrating the breadth and depth of his songwriting talents. Paul Anka has been honored with numerous awards and recognitions throughout his career. He received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1984 and was honored on the Canadian Walk of Fame in 2005. He has also received numerous music awards, including a Juno Award for Artist of the Year and a Grammy nomination for his songwriting. Tribute concerts, such as the one in Ottawa in 2023, have featured young artists performing his songs, paying homage to his legacy. In addition to his music, Paul is recognized for his charitable contributions, especially in supporting diabetes research and education programs for disadvantaged children. He has donated millions of dollars to charities and regularly participates in fundraising events. Paul Anka's legacy is a story of perseverance and talent.